are live in 3. Oh, shoot. I think my audio's been coming through this whole time. I didn't mute that. Incredible. This is so funny. This is why we're doing it. Let's do it. We're live. Woo! Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. I am Ryan Mossbarger, and this is...
I'm Colin Ketchen.
We are potentially your favorite characters from our podcast, Dice Populi, and
one person likes bait. One person likes bait.
And we're here to answer your most sought-after, burning questions about the campaign. We have a decent-sized list of listener questions, even asking some kind of specific bits about what our characters would do in given situations. But I think the best way to kick this off, Colin, is how are you? I think not a lot. How are you doing?
I'm so tired. I'm so tired.
Dice Populi is finished. For those of you that don't know, Colin, while one of the editors that we have, plays bait, is also like the arch DM. I can't remember. You came up with a particular title
headmaster.
For your
I thought
headmaster.
Yeah. Hi, Ray.
So
hi in chat. Ray's in chat, so I'm saying hi.
So basically, was making sure that if for anybody that doesn't know the basic premise of our podcast, every player is also a DM, and they DM a arc in the campaign. Colin was there to make sure that all of those arcs didn't like step on each other and worked towards what the final goal is, which is us destroying the mage lords and I guess, spoiler alert, killing bait, his character. So
yeah, we got some questions about that. It was basically you at the beginning of Dicey Waters, which is the campaign we just finished. You laid out all this world building, and then I just like let everyone do their thing and took notes, and then it was my turn to wrap it all up, and that took a long time. And we put out 3 episodes last month. They were all very complicated to edit and score. And we've been trying to we're going to also be announcing a lot of stuff today. For anybody that doesn't hear this live, we're going to be posting the audio of this as a podcast later, but we're making a lot of announcements about what we're going to try to do for the rest of the year. And I'll just be dropping those nuggets here and there in between the questions.
Yeah. So I think first question, I don't think this is anybody's question but my own. How does it feel for this to be finished? I think we all have a sense of accomplishment, but maybe you as the one that was really had their hands on the wheel the entire time, how do you feel?
I think accomplishment is the central feeling. There's a lot of my goal editing the final episode, chapter 117, Friendship, was I want to make at least one person cry with this. Like there's the part of me that wanted that sappy, sentimental, like, oh, it's the end of the story. But truthfully, it's such a, like, Josh dropping out so early. The last, for a while, we, like, dropped a lot of our initiatives because it was just a lot of work and we were busy. And this year, I pulled it. I stopped everyone and said, I want to double down on this. And so that's been, like, the last 6 months. So I'm so pleased that we have a finished campaign and the accomplishment is there. It's hard for me to sit in that because of all the shit we're going to talk about today. But
yeah,
I have so many like little secrets in my head that I'm just like, I get to say everything now. You know?
I think I feel similar. Like this campaign may be my longest running campaign.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. We've been doing this since what? It was like 2018?
August 2019. We have been playing this
August 2019, yeah.
We recorded the last episode, I think it was early May, like only like a week or two before it came out. We recorded it very recently. So this was a 4.5-year campaign.
Very long campaign, and it actually, like, it didn't fall apart. We didn't disperse. Like,
nope.
We finished the campaign. We finished the arc. And honestly, I don't think this might be a very common. I think this is very common for all D&D or tabletop RPG players. It's very rare that you actually finish the campaign. Like, life takes over. People drop out. Dungeon master, game master gets busy. And I've had many campaigns that have gone on for multiple years that just fell flat way before the finish line. And this might be my first finished campaign.
Like not just like we ended it, but like we worked towards it like an actual conclusion. I think having the rotating DMs not only afforded us a lot of interesting story stuff, but it changed the level of investment. And I don't see this question on the list, so I'll just kind of say it. Like, going into the new age end of all things, like, my goal was to tie everything together, not just like narratively, but sort of structurally, because like
Mm.
everyone had a different idea of what gods were. I wanted to like get a baseline of that. Like, everyone had their different spots on the map. I wanted to functionally tie it together. So opening up in the map and like letting you guys choose, like, I was like, okay, I need you guys to go to Arianor, and you guys are like, Black Tide, and I was like, cool. So like, but like, it added a lot of time, but I think it added the structure I was looking for. So it was just, that was definitely the biggest challenge, and I think that reinforcement of trying to make sure that, like, Pat came up with the Black Tide thing, Matt came up with Arianor, you came up
Mm.
with the Stoneholm shit, trying to make sure that we like made sure everything you did was vital.
Yeah, everything
It,
kind of looped into each other, and there was
yeah,
payoff,
yeah.
which I think is very important,
I,
making
I
sure
think
that
that I think that kept us in the game,
yeah, for sure. So I
except
think
Josh.
one of the yeah, Josh, poor Josh. Well, Josh was just like, "Ah, this is not how I like to play Dungeons and
Yeah,
Dragons. I'm out," which is
I have some
fair.
secrets about that I can finally share. But it's gonna be
Oh,
fun.
do you wanna share now, or
I
is that
think it'll
something
come up.
holding your
I think
pocket?
it'll come up in some of the questions, but
Okay.
there are just little things over the years that I've had to keep quiet that I can just say now.
So I think this one's a really good question. It's I'm not necessarily doing these questions in order.
Sure.
Was bait always planned to be the eventual BBEG, or was that something that happened from our feelings towards bait, which I feel like at best were very tepid?
It was a roller coaster because from the start, the character of Bait, you meet him in episode 1, and then in episode 3 he gets thrown off a cliff, and presumably dead until he shows up in Josh's campaign. I never intended to play Bait as a character. That was Josh's idea. He was like, "I want you to play in my story." So he brought me into that. That was not going to happen otherwise. Like, it came in the night. I wasn't there. So my plan for Bait initially was like, Bait's secretly the bad guy, and then as I like we got into recording, I was like, that's so obvious and boring that I'm just gonna let go of the expectations. That, like, the necklace on the cat on the ship, I originally had an idea for, and then Josh was like, it's a magic inhibitor, and it's actually Florence, and she was cursed into a cat. And I was like, I just need to be, every idea I had, I let go of by like episode 10.
Mm.
I was like, none of that. So after that, it was just me trying to play Bait as a character. And that character is tremendously guilt ridden, has a lot of secrets, and
Greasy.
very greasy. And so I tried to play the character really honestly. The decision to make him the BBEG came pretty late in the game. I outlined all this new age end of all things final adventure stuff a while ago, but I was struggling for the conclusion because I was like, in terms of scope, the Azagar stuff that Chowder set up, the stuff that he wrote there, it's like that has to be like, if we're going big,
Mm.
that's the big ending. But you guys never met him. He's not a character. There's no stakes there. And I'm like, the BBEG needs to have some sort of emotional connection for it to be satisfying.
Yeah.
You have strong emotional connection to Bait, even though it's not necessarily good. And,
Good. Yeah.
and I think I was also, I think the biggest opportunities that we had, the things that we missed, were like really developing the Mage Lords as a villain. And I think making Bait a poster child for like just this oppressive air of control that they have will drive you fucking nuts. And
Mm.
so it came as me saying like, I need an attachment, and I was like, this makes sense for the character. Even the betrayal of Locke back in Locked and Loaded, like, I came to Pat and I said, this is going to piss people off in the group, but saying Bait betrayed you, like, that just makes sense as a role play thing. How do you feel about that? So it always came from the role play of the character. It was never prescriptive. I abandoned that idea long ago, and it just happened to come back to that point. And it, to me, it feels honest for him.
It did feel honest, and I do think, Bait was always kind of a mysterious character. We never
Mm-hmm.
really knew what or why he was doing or why he was doing it.
Yeah.
And it definitely there was like a self-serving factor in there. So it did work out. It felt like I wouldn't have guessed it would have happened,
Mhm.
but it felt right that it did. It was one
Yeah.
of those like, "Oh shit, Bait is the bad guy."
Yeah.
Bait is finally is like, I think the true test of a person is when you put ultimate power within their grasp, what they do with it, and I think that is the moment that Bait decided, like, "Fuck it, like, these guys are
Yeah.
idiots, they don't like me, I have
Mhm.
nothing to lose and everything to gain, like, who gives a
Yeah.
shit
That's
about them?"
exactly it. And
So
I'll say that Chowder and I did some prologue stuff with Bait. I do plan on putting that out in the feed fairly soon. We've been sitting on it for a while, and I think it's a nice little coda with some of the stuff that came up in the last two episodes.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's just it felt like where the story was going, and it felt like if I was actively playing the character in the background while you guys were out fucking around on the boat, he would have said, "I don't trust them. I need to make sure this doesn't happen again." Azagar is how I do that.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like that. I think this also kind of comes into we were talking about like planning versus random stuff. Some people also again spoilers. You can just assume that there's going to be a lot of spoilers being
Yeah,
talked about in this. If you've not finished the campaign, maybe not the best episode to start on. Uh, a decent number of NPCs died. Dennis, Tony, were those planned in any way? Was that randomly determined? Was that just like the situation they were in and the factors around them? Like how did you choose that they weren't gonna like miraculously survive or anything like that?
the spirit of Josh compelled me, and it was Dice.
It was
Once
Dice. Oh,
what?
a question also by Kale.
Yeah, yeah, and basically what happened was you guys, when I gave you the opportunity to choose, do you risk dropping the tears early or do you help the people in the battle? You made your choice, and I was like,
well, I didn't make the choice.
well,
They
no,
made
but
the
like
choice for me. But
as a
it's fine.
party, a decision was made. The consequences were that, and I'm going to tell you this: I tried to kill Bottle Brew so many fucking times, and you guys just didn't let it happen. I thought you hated
it's
Bottle Brew more than Bait, but you guys saved him time and again. And when I rolled the dice, everyone fucking died except Bottle Brew, and I'm like, all right, that's it. That's the dice.
uh I think that was the thing. Like we like to antagonize Bottle Brew
Mm-hmm.
because it felt a little bit like it, I for me personally, it felt slightly like a self insert character. Like there was Bait, and then Bottle
uh,
Brew also felt like because there was very obvious like Captain Kirk kind of vibes going on. And then,
a little bit,
with
yeah,
Dennis in there as well, it's like, oh, so it's Captain Kirk and Spock. Okay, I
yeah,
get you.
little bit.
Um, so I was like, oh, that's like funny to make fun of, and that
Mm-hmm.
felt like, I had to like mess with it a little bit. But
Yeah,
yeah, like I think none of us disliked Bottle Brew. I don't think there was ever a time like Bait had done sketchy stuff,
yeah.
um, done unexplained actions, but it always felt like Bottle Brew, even when there maybe was some sketchy things, always had a great reason for them and
Yeah.
more or less explained it. While Bait was like, "Well, I just felt like
Yeah,
I did what I was
exactly.
supposed to do."
On that note, Ray actually asked the question of when did the players find out that Bait was bad? And the answer is
When
in
y'all did.
yeah, at the end of chapter 115 when they teleport back and the tower is gone, that's when they
Yeah,
found out.
that's
I
when we found out.
mhm.
And it was like it was truly surprise because like, "Oh, we'll leave Bait here, I'll leave
Yeah,
Jerry,
they thought
they'll watch
Azagar
out for
was the
these
BBEG, that
villagers."
like they thought
Yeah,
Azagar they beat it.
that was a curveball to us, big time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that was very surprising, but I think it was done in a good way. I was surprised, but in a way that was like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah.
Like, Bait's a piece of
The
shit
way
to
I
the
like
very
to say it
last.
is like surprised but not shocked.
Yeah, surprised
Yeah.
but not shocked. Oh, Chowder, it was just fun ribbing when it came to Bob. I think that's true.
Yeah.
Like, he had a funny name. Like, I mean, honestly, it was very, like, elementary school. He had a weird name,
Yeah.
and we just, like, latched on,
He has a
couldn't
weird
help
name.
ourselves.
He has a big butt.
Yeah, he kinda brought it upon himself.
Uh,
I so
well, before we bump into the next
oh, okay.
question, I want to start sprinkling in some of the announcements on the point of what is coming next for the podcast. Obviously, we're done with Dicey Waters, and in our last 5W, we talked about stuff that we want to do, Chowder, Pat, and I, going forward. I think to start, I just want to say what we're doing next in the main podcast feed. And I have something planned for this month, but starting in July, we have 3 episodes of a new arc already recorded where Chowder DM'd a one shot of a game called Spine of Eternity. And we had 2 guests in that, Amani Bryant and Eva Terra. And Eva is the creator of Spine of Eternity. So we got to sit down with all of them. It's Chowder, Pat, and those 2 guests, and you'll get 3 episodes of that in your main podcast feed. There are more details on what we'll be doing in the future. I'll make sure that's all in a blog post next week. But if you're listening to this podcast, the show is not over. We're prepared to have a lot of fun. Chowder says he's very excited for you all to see it. So that is the first announcement I want to sprinkle in.
I've heard cool things about it. I talked to Amani, and they said that they had an absolute blast playing with everybody. For those of you that don't know, Amani is a mod on a Discord for called Historically Black Dice. It's a Discord for Black folks to get together and play games in a safe space. Amani is also one of the coolest people I know. Extremely intelligent. They are, I think, just about to get. They're about to apply for their doctorate. So
Damn.
like big brained,
So
super
smartest
sweet,
person
super
that's ever been
nice.
on the podcast then
Yeah,
by a mile.
exactly.
Okay, cool, cool,
Definitely,
cool.
definitely in the running.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
hear along with everybody else. I unfortunately, I think I was
You
doing, I can't remember what I was doing. I
you
may have been on
were
a cruise when
Yeah,
y'all
no,
were
yeah,
doing
you
this.
were unavailable. I've been drowning in work, but we already have some other recordings lined up after that. I'm also hoping maybe I can reach out to Josh and see if I can get him to swing back in for something else because
That would be fun.
I miss the guy. I haven't talked to him in a minute, and he played a big part in the show. But yes, we have more coming. That's
Mhm.
first on the docket, and I'm very excited to actually
Yeah.
hit that in the edit.
And then after that, I might have a little something coming down the pike.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna be we're gonna play one of my favorite new tabletop RPGs, like new to me. It's been
Mm-hmm.
around for a few years. And it's going to be Brindlewood Bay, which is Murder She Wrote, the tabletop RPG. You play
I
the
hope I have
you
the time to
play
do that. I really do.
crime solving grandmas. I've got like a couple of guests loosely that have said yes based upon the time frame. I'm very excited to play with them. I've played with almost all of them before, and they're just so much fun. I can't wait to like get that group together and
Mm-hmm.
play. It is going to be an absolute blast. I'm
Yeah.
very excited.
All right.
Back onto the track of these questions here. I can answer my part of this question. You might know as the headmaster, were there
Mm-hmm.
any backup PCs in place if anybody died? This is also by Kale.
No, there were no backup PCs specifically in place. There were um there was antsiness. I think that if I had to like characterize behaviors, I think you as Cult, you just sort of like sunk into that role. Um Obviously my characters were rotating in and out. Pat was not hooked into Locke, and he was like, if you kill him, I'm just gonna roll up someone else. And I fucking he came really close. Like I feel a little like I failed as the DM of the end because nobody died. Like the whole
Mm,
party survived. I did try to kill you guys, and you just kept making the right decisions to save each other. Um but I think Matt also would have been fine with it. Matt seemed to be the person most averse to like the show side of this. Like he's
mhm.
very into like let's just do the role play. Doesn't want to tweak things in post. And I mean, yeah, Chatter just posted in the chat. He was always prepared to pick up
Arlen.
Arlen. So we were. It was never like we need to keep these characters alive. I was trying to murder them, and I failed. But we were all ready. We knew what
Mm.
it was.
I can answer for myself. I had no background character.
Mm-hmm.
I if I say this knowing that the next time I play a game, it will come back to bite me. I actually have a hard time taking damage in Dungeons and Dragons. I tend to play ranged like I tend to play ranged
Mm-hmm.
characters. I feel like I'm relatively good about positioning myself, and I've always played with people that are tanks. So I have a Strahd game that I'm in that I am a ranger. I have taken maybe throughout, and we're very close to the end of the campaign, I
Mhm.
have maybe taken 50 points of damage throughout the entire campaign. Other people have been dropped and died multiple times.
That's ridiculous.
I've started the campaign with the same character. I'm like, there's maybe 1 or 2 other people that have had the same character all throughout this
Mhm.
campaign. Some people are on their 3rd or 4th character.
Yeah.
So I never planned for, like, I feel like the second you make a backup character, that's when you start thinking about like, "Oh, well, it's not so bad." And Colt knew what he was doing.
Yep.
He was like, "I'm gonna let y'all jamokes do the things that you do. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be in the back line." I will say though, my little scheme throughout the last little arc here is that I have this staff and I planted this seed early. So the staff has something called, I think it's called a retributive
I think
strike,
I left this in the
which
edit because it was I
I
had no
can
idea about
crack
this.
it.
Yeah.
So I can crack it and it basically little rift. Well, like there's a 50% chance I get thrown into some random place or dimension.
Mhm.
But like if I fail that 50-50, I take something like a D6 for every charge, or like maybe it's a D8
It was a
for every
lot.
charge
It
that's
was
in the
heavy.
staff.
I think it was a D8
And
or a
it's
D12.
yeah, and it's 20 charges in that, so I'd effectively be taking 20 D6. The thing next to me takes like 10 or 15 D6, and then it's like a scaled back explosion for every like gradient after that. To where like if you're 20 feet away, you're taking like
Yeah.
2 D6 or something like that. And my undercover plan throughout this was like I wanted Cult to do the sacrifice play, to like put it all out on the line and just like break it. Because I feel like that would have been like a
Yep.
good arc for Cult.
It would have.
Um,
I think the arc we got for Cult is one of the most impressive because Cult felt very lived in. You had such a firm idea of that character. And
mhm,
I'm very glad with the choices I made for how I role played Jerry because it seemed like the final catalyst to like enact change. And at no point did you and I ever butt heads on that. I feel like we had a
no.
blast playing those characters against each other. And they ended up, I had a very specific idea for what I was going to do for them at the end. And we ended up nowhere near it. And I really like what we
Yeah.
got.
So that's I like in the final battle, we're talking about it, and like Maeve's up front, I'm like very specifically asking for distances, all these things. I'm like, you know what?
Yep.
This seems like a good time. And then like right as I'm about to do it, like right, I think Bait was like on the last legs of that
Hmm.
dragon or whatever. And I think if it had been like gone one turn more, I think the only thing that really slowed me down was that Maeve was way too close and
Yeah.
Maeve was down.
Yeah.
So that was like, I was thinking of what I could do. Like, I just don't have any like way to move other people or
Yeah.
do things. So I was like trying to really figure out what to do. But yeah, so that like I didn't have a backup character plan, but I was looking to have that like epic like last stand moment.
Yeah.
And there's still like a 50% chance I'm just somewhere else in the multiverse causing mischief. Cause I think you either get teleported, you just get randomly teleported, or you plane shift randomly. One
Yeah.
of the two things happens.
That
So
makes sense.
oh, Zed has a little thing. Hi, guys. I'm currently in a session for A Curse of Strahd. It's a fun one. But I just want to say thank you for all of those years of fun and amazing moments.
Thank
Much
you.
love. Well, thank you, Zed. That's amazing. We have a couple of questions in here from Zed
Yeah,
as well.
and Zed's been with us for a long, long time. Real
Yeah.
Stan, real great guy. Gave some music for our Mage Love episode ages ago.
Yeah.
So good stuff. Thank you, Zed.
Zed's
Thank you so much.
amazing.
Uh,
So let's because Zed chimed in, let's do a little thing. What's everyone's final levels? That's a Zed question. I think
I
I
think
was level 12.
it was 12 or 14. I think Maeve might have been
Maeve
14
had
because
14, everybody
yeah,
else was
I
12,
think so.
because
Yeah,
Maeve, I think, wished to be older, and that was
yeah,
the
yeah. That was the wish with Seraphina, but
I should have
I'm
wished for ninth level spells.
yeah. I'm famously like the least invested in D&D as like a as a platform. I just like it as a tool set. So I became real disinterested in stuff like that and I kept having to remind myself to tell people to do that and I sort of fell off at the end, but yeah. I think what I came to was a narrative justification of you guys are doing stuff with gods and I feel like
Hmm.
that because we're not tracking XP and our shit, we have different DM styles. So it's just like, if you do something with a god, crank it up by 2, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Also, another question from Zed that's kind of like appends with this a little bit.
Hmm.
Uh, I multi-classed, so I was cleric one.
Yes.
I know
I
there
always
was some
forget that.
questions about like how I was wearing armor, how I was able to cast certain spells like Healing Word. So I was Cleric 1, Wizard X. So I guess in this circumstance, Cleric 1, Wizard 11. I think I'm the only person that multi-classed.
Yes.
Am I correct in that?
I think
Yeah.
you are. I think Jeddah and Locke both took like subclass paths that borrowed from other classes, but I think you're the only true multi-class.
Yeah, and I had to do that. I think we discussed this before, but I wasn't I didn't roll my stats. I had a couple of different character concepts built up. I
Yeah.
had a paladin that like was like hardcore believer and like a god of there was a I think I may have been homebrew, not my homebrew, but like a semi-official, like very popular homebrew for a god named Keg, which was basically a god of like getting drunk and fist fighting and stuff like that. And I was a big fan of that. So I had a paladin that was going to be in that. And then I want to say I had another one that I was thinking about. It may have been a wizard, but it wasn't like a dark wizard. It wasn't a
Yeah,
necromancer.
but then I rolled your stats.
And then everybody else had just
Above
gold
average.
standard,
Really good.
amazing stats. I had pure dookie stats. So I had like, I think it was like an 8 dex, a 10 strength, a 10 wisdom. Oh, like I think it was like 8, 10, 9, 11, and
Yeah.
then like a 13 or something
Yep.
like that. It was not good. So I was like, okay, well, I can make this work. I was gonna have to compensate. So it's like we're starting off at like third
Hmm.
level. It's like if I, what's the way like I can't be a paladin anymore because you need like multiple good stats to be a paladin. It's like I can't be a fighter. I will only have like a 13 strength or a 15 strength and like a 10 con.
Yeah.
Like, all right, if I do wizard, like I can avoid damage, but if I wear armor, so I ended up coming this multi-class to compensate. I think it worked out.
I think it
It,
did.
it ended up being good.
You,
I was a little salty in the beginning.
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
You sort of played the character out of spite, but you found something I think really really fun in Cult.
not a cult.
On that note, I think Kale asked about bottle brew bubble butts build.
Mm,
I think I want to take this opportunity to answer that question and another that has not been asked, but something that I've been wanting to get off my chest, which is bottle brew. Let me pull this up. He was a rogue swashbuckler.
okay,
Jeddah
makes sense.
Chatter is saying was an arcane trickster, which that became a point of contention in the last episode that she could cast cantrips but couldn't become a god. Um, but yeah, Bottle Brew. I didn't have a build for him until Matt's Zula Ragnar Seafoam Glow mini
Mm,
thing. He was like, "I want you to play as Bait, so just have Bait get here." And me knowing what's going on in the background, I'm like, I cannot think of a reason Bait would not be in Naranial. That's where Bait
yeah,
is.
yeah.
So I'll play as Bottle Brew, and so I just basically rolled up a character. I didn't do it super preciously. I mapped it to how I'd role played the character so far. I never intended for him to be a PC.
Mm,
Bait was a different story, and this is the source of a bit of controversy I hinted at earlier in the thing, in the stream. I always knew that Bait had been around for a long, long time. We didn't have hard numbers, but at the beginning, I was like, he's been at Farpoint. This is not new to him. These are not the first people that he's met here. Like, those were some of the core ideas I had in the character. With that in mind, and with the initial thought of maybe he'll be big bad evil guy, is Bait has always been a level 20 character from jump. I made
mm,
that character sheet 5 years ago, and he has been downplaying stuff. So anytime that he did something that was a little outside of scope, it was on the character sheet I was using. Where this caused some problems is very early on. I
yes.
was super tight-lipped about how I was doing stuff. I sort of opened up more because of what happened. But as Josh was running the game and Bait fell out of the tree, the edit is pretty clean. But what happened was Josh said, it's 200
Well,
feet. He's like, you're just
you're
dead.
dead.
And then I was like trying not to. And any way I said it, it just sounded like, no, don't kill my character, please. I was trying to ask him, could you
Mm,
please roll the damage? Because I have some stuff I haven't told you. With him as the DM, I should have given him that information. But basically,
Yeah.
in the middle of that episode, I was like, hey, here's the file. I timestamped it. I swear I'm not making this up. This is his actual health pool. And he rolled the damage, and Bait survived. If Bait had died from that
Mhm.
dice roll, I would have stuck with it. Fine. But I put myself in this position where I couldn't say it, and I think that is what pushed Josh over the edge. I believe that in my heart. That is
You
what
broke
I
Josh.
think that I am absolutely to blame for Josh stepping back when he did, because that was a moment where, because of the contrivance of the game, he wasn't playing D&D anymore. He was making a show. If only for that little
Mm,
10-minute squabble, I think that very much just like
that
soured
was
him
the
on it.
breaking point.
So I've been carrying that guilt with me for a long time.
I mean, it happens. I
Yeah,
think, especially
I
with
didn't handle
the
it great.
dynamic of shifting dungeon masters and
Hmm.
things. I think we none of us really had done that before. It was very
Yeah,
new to everybody involved. Nobody would have expected that that exact thing would have happened beforehand. I mean, yeah, like now that in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, I should have told about my character. But like,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we
I
were
had no
all
idea what I was
many
doing.
years ago very new at it,
Yeah,
so I understand that. This it might be an interesting thing as like a pivot from here. Did you want to change your? I mean, you changed out of all of us. I think you played the most characters.
yeah,
I know I didn't want to change, but did anyone want to change PCs at any point in the show? I think Chowder has had two characters.
yeah.
We've had three, two or three as well.
I think I played. I know I played as Bait and Bottle Brew.
'Cause I think you played as Florence for a little
I
bit,
don't know if
right?
I
Or am
I
I making that up?
I definitely had to do stuff as Florence in the above boards. I don't think I ran her as a PC. I rolled up a spec
Okay.
sheet for her after Josh introduced that character. Um, but no, I don't know that I played her. But I here's the thing, I really like Bait, not because he's a likable character, but because to me he was a very honest character. Like every lie he told was because he's like so deeply fucked up, and I know why he's fucked up. And getting to explore that, I'm so grateful to Chowder for what he did and meant to be, like giving me the tools to like dig into that character a bit without hijacking the story
Yeah.
was a real treat. So I never wanted to let go of Bait because I wanted to tell that story. Um, but I was also in the weird spot where I wasn't playing a lot for the first half of the thing. So
I think no, that's true. I don't think I never really wanted to switch characters. Like I
yeah.
thought about it. It wouldn't have been like a bad thing. I don't mind like taking a second
Hmm.
whack at a character or something like that, but it just never came up. I'm bad at taking damage.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just a win for me.
Well, actually,
So
I
this
want to piggyback off this
oh,
to make the next little announcement. Just to say, talking about our characters in Dice Populi, I made this announcement in the Discord, but I want to expand on it. We are going to make an effort towards live streaming video games, something I've been talking about for a long time. And there are three things I have to say on that right now that I think are pretty fun. First is tomorrow. So if you're listening to the podcast of this later, it's already out.
June 2nd,
June
which
2nd,
would
tomorrow,
be
June 2nd, Pat is going to recreate the character of Locke in Baldur's Gate 3 and do a monthly live stream of that. The frequency of that may increase if the interest is there. Right now, it's just a matter of finding the time commitment. But
I have one thing to say, and that he
uh-huh.
needs to do his little New Yorker or New Jersey accent.
I we
I think it'll
we
be popular if he does the
I
voice.
he is very very Italian American, like in just all in like it is. So if anyone's gonna do it and not have it be a problem, it's him, and he can
He's
do
got
it
the
well.
pozzole in his cheese.
It's the thing. Every
Um,
time I told my partner, because she's also very Italian, about the like the gabagool stuff we would do, she's like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "My mother's maiden name is Romano. I'm I'm quite
like, have you
I'm
heard of the cheese?
yeah." Excuse me, I say in like my most fucking like
Miss Goosey, Miss Goosey.
Scusi. But that's just one of the things we're doing. The following week, Chowder is going to be rolling up a version of Jeddah in Elden Ring. And
Right.
the week after that, I will be rolling up a version of Bait in Fallout 1, which I have never played,
Oh,
and trying to go through the entire mainline Fallout series.
be prepared to be underwhelmed by the sands of time. I don't know how well it's gonna. I've tried playing the first one and I was like, oh
Yeah.
no.
I'm hoping it'll be fun to find, because the reason I decided to do that was, one, the show was obviously top of mind for us, but
Yeah.
two, I was like, if I'm gonna play bait in something else, he's a scrappy, conniving survivor, and Fallout is like the perfect place for that. So those are
A lot
three
of
things that,
chance to kill rats.
yeah. So we're gonna be starting those. So we'll have one of those each month. Those VODs will go up on YouTube. So each one will just be like its own little series. So another something to throw on in the background. And we're excited to try it. With all of these initiatives that we're starting, we kind of want to see them through at least to the end of the year. And if there's interest, keep them going. So you're going to get a decent amount of all of these at the very, very least. And I hope you enjoy them.
That should be fun. App ending some of the things. I guess it might be a good way to kind of close off this character talk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, are we going to be releasing character sheets? This is from Zed. I have my character sheet ready to go. It's a PDF I can send out at any point in time. I think I would assume everybody else is probably the same. I think we were all using like
I think we're all in D&D
digital
Beyond or
sheets.
something like that. At
Yeah, so
least Pat
I
and I
think we
were.
could do that.
I think that that's a great idea. We have famously not kept a lot of our initial promises of what we were going to release because of the amount of work that it took to do it, and
I'm
we're
sorry I never released my adventure. I started and it was too much work and
it is
I'm bad.
exactly. Well, that's it. It was so much more work than we thought, because if we had like gotten ahead of it and say we're all going to write our
Mm.
adventures in this way and like make them compatible, cool, but we all just did our own thing, and Josh, I doubt he wrote down a single fucking note.
The biggest thing for me is I've tried to make like 5th edition, a couple of 5th edition adventures now.
Mm-hmm.
I have our entire entrenched campaign is basically a version of like a half-baked document that I have made to be eventually published. There is something about so there's like a official layout guide for 5th edition,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a certain way you lay everything out. You use this color boxes for this box for that. Everything needs, bold means this thing, italics
Mm-hmm.
means this.
Yep.
Everything has to have a certain like flow. I read that and it's like reading a different
The
language.
thing is,
I can't do it.
that is my fucking lifeblood. I love
I
style guides. I
can't do
love
it.
consistent formatting.
I can't do, like, I mean, it just drains. I have
Yeah,
to go back
I
and
get
edit. Like
that.
my problem is like I have to make it work on instead of just writing it all out, I have
Mm-hmm.
to keep on going back and making it work. I, for the longest time, thought I'd never be able to publish an adventure. Basically, until I started playing more indie games where they're like,
Yeah,
it doesn't just
yeah.
as long as it's like as long as it's like focus on readability and
Mm-hmm.
clarity. It doesn't need to have like anything else other, like just make sure it flows and like, hey, look at all these other examples that you could use. And I started doing that. I could do that. I can
Yeah,
make that work,
yeah,
but the 5th edition thing is like such a wall for me.
yeah,
Maybe eventually, I mean, I have a lot of the
yeah.
Eberron stuff. Like
Yeah.
to the point where I had a mentor. Like I got this program for like 5th edition makers or whatever, and like I had a mentor. She looked through it, said it was fucking great. And it's like, all you just have to do is make sure it matches up to the guide. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get on that. Started working on it, and just like I just
Yeah.
evaporated. Like I couldn't do it.
I would love
So
to.
one day maybe.
Yeah, I'll talk more about this later, but I have ambitions for that. But for now, I think an excellent middle ground would be character sheets. I'll talk to the other folks. I'll see if
Yeah.
we can get those out at some point soon. I over the next month, I'll be updating the dicepopuli.com. I've already started, but
Mhm.
I would love to put that up there. I think that's a fantastic
Yeah, I
idea.
think it'll be easy too because we already have them done.
Uh,
So these next two are a little bit more out of pocket.
okay.
One's for me, but I'll ask you the one. If Jerry lived forever, could he become a god? I liked the idea of Jerry ended up being the god.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to put that forward, but I guess Jerry couldn't cast magic, so that's on Jerry.
Yeah. So part of me trying to unify the idea of gods in this campaign was I I love Tolkien. I love Tolkien. I have read so much of his shit and so much of the shit that his son Christopher published in the Legendarium later. Like at this point, I think I know more about first stage stuff than I do about actual Lord of the Rings. And so I have the reason I can get into that is generally I do not like fantasy settings very much, but Tolkien has such a rigid logic undergirding everything. So when it came time to talk Galagath stuff, I was like, this is not just flip a switch and suddenly you can do everything all the time. I like the idea that like gods have their specialties and that's for a reason. And Galagath is a broken god. So if he's going to merge with someone, they need to bring something to the table. Like he cooperated with Maeve. They figured out time stuff. Like, that's a little squidgy in the definitions, but like he can't do everything and he needs someone that can do stuff he can't. That was not Jerry. That
Could have
said,
been. It
but
could have
but
been.
that said, the technology exists. Jerry is a zombie.
We can make him better. We can make him
Yeah,
stronger.
we have the technology. And he could do that. I had a specific idea for Jerry that was tied into his relationship with Cult that could have led him down the road of being a dark god, which was Cult was such, and I haven't talked to Ryan about this at all, so this is going to be news to Ryan right now. But I had this idea in my head where Cult was being such a dick to Jerry, and Jerry was such an insufferable little piece of shit, like a naive, idealistic, no experience, black and white view of the world, and they were just butting heads. And I was like, if this doesn't get resolved, Jerry's resentment is going to bubble over as his powers come forth, and he is going to try to kill Cult. I had like this like old thing, like you guys on a mountaintop, the silhouette of a knife being rammed into you. Knowing Cult is powerful, that could have easily flipped, and then Cult is forced to kill Jerry. I wanted that
It's very
drama.
dark. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted that drama. And the idea was in my head was if that happens and Jerry kills Cult, Jerry becomes this sort of marauding, like Batman type person that is like trying to like correct the mistakes of his father. And he's already so powerful. Like I had this very specific idea for what could have happened. We ended up nowhere near that. So the answer is yes. If Ryan is right and Call is right and Jerry lives forever, he could turn into a good version of that idea.
Mm.
But
That's the thing.
it's
Cult
open.
would have had to been wrong in anything that Cult said. That's the big
Exactly.
one.
Yeah.
Cult was never wrong.
Yeah. So
Oh, go ahead.
no,
Sorry if
no,
I
no,
cut
you're
you off.
good. You're good.
So this one was for me. It says, okay, this is from Sam on the Discord. Okay, not gonna lie. What kind of mess would there have been if Ryan Cult had this spell? You can say so. This is a homebrew spell called Carnage. I'll do the Cliff Notes version. But basically, within a 1 mile radius around you, you make everybody basically go battle crazy, for lack of a better word, and they begin to like fight. I think so. Let's see here. The major effects. So people need to make a charisma, intelligence, or wisdom saving throw in a 1 mile radius. On a failed save, they become charmed, and entered a frenzy state of violence for the duration. The duration is an hour.
What?
Effect. So all the creatures that are affected gain advantage on all weapon attacks. All attacks against affected creatures have advantage. Whenever an affected creature reduces another creature to 0 hit points, they gain 5 temporary hit points. While an affected creature has more than half its maximum hit points, it gets like basically enters rage, so it has non-magical resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. And affected creatures must use their action each turn to attack the nearest enemy creature they can see. If no enemies are within their range, they must move towards the nearest enemy creature. If no enemies are within sight, they repeat the initial saving throw. Basically, you make like the worst version of a Vans Warp Tour like mosh pit, but in a mile radius.
My
And
mind goes to
honestly,
two places there. I'm interested to see what you have to say.
I think this would have been a spell that called. If this was offered to me, I would have taken it.
Yeah.
Most of Cult stuff is either damage or chaos, and this is heavy on the chaos side. And I don't know necessarily when this would have been a good time to use, but I don't like honestly, if I had this earlier, this would have been a great one to use with the Black Tide in their little hideout.
That was one of the two things that my
Um,
mind went to. Because instead
yeah.
you use the void staff you got in Crinkle Snoot Cavern, and you fucking eviscerated all of them. And I think that when we were like, you kill a lot of people, I think that's maybe the most significant event people were pointing to. I love how you just like shrug it off like, I don't give a fuck. Like Ryan is so committed to this. I fucking love it.
I so here's the thing. As a person that plays a lot of different tabletop RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons is a game of violence. You have it's all types of violence. You have physical violence, you have like mental violence. Yeah, I could have maybe mind controlled some of them, but that's still a form of violence. And there's not many like if somebody wants to be aggressive towards you or stop you from doing your thing, people say like, oh well, you can be diplomatic. Well, like 5e, the system doesn't give you a lot of tools to be diplomatic
No.
or like solve things. That is something you as a group have to like handle and be like, oh, well, we should reason with them. I was just like, this game is about violence. Cult is about violence. Why pretend to like Cult has anything else in his heart but violence towards like people that are trying to attack him?
Yeah.
He has no charisma. He has no like anything else to handle
Yep.
conflict besides violence. And when you're a hammer, everything looks like nails. And to be honest, all of our adventures, people like the characters may have had complaints. Oh, you kill people, you kill people. It's like they were trying to kill us.
Yeah.
Like,
And I enjoyed mining that tension with Jerry and using him as a foil for that in the end of all things, because Colin, that's a point I agree with, is like you really were fairly justified most of the time. I think arguments could be made about the degree of it. So having Jerry as a foil, because nobody else really confronted you very much about it aside from just throwing shade, and having someone to
yeah.
push at you and like really flesh out that idea felt really good for me.
It would have been funny if there was a situation where like a lot of low level, like if we had like a small scale battle with mage lords, and I think if instead of turning into a whale, because that was also I think a tipping point for
Oh, that
people.
was so fun.
That was like, you destroyed you killed all those people. I think it'd have been, if like maybe we had that discussion a little before that, Cult would have just like floated in the air and been like, well, nobody seems to want me to kill anyone, so I guess hey,
Yeah.
stop that.
Yeah. No.
Be better.
So the other instance that comes to my mind as an opportunity for that is actually a second chance when we were doing the loop through Matt's thing, because in two of those loops there were battles between the mage lord led villagers of Arianor and the what were called the bandits, and later I think I just renamed them the natives of led by Masak. And I think that you guys really took up arms against the mage lords there, and I think that would have been a great
I was ready to drop
spot for you to use
bodies.
that.
That was like, oh, we should get rid of all of them. And
Yeah.
then I felt like, and then who was running? Was that Matt that was running that one?
Yes, yes, it was.
Was it Matt was like, oh, like I think Matt was like, we don't have to go. I think Matt was like, we don't have to do fighting again. Like, let's just wrap this up. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's been enough death today. I was like, no, there has not. They still live.
Yeah. That
So
was one of the first like really strong role play moments I think I had with you, was you were saying like we need to lead this battle, and like Bait had a counterpoint, and like we were arguing in character, and it felt, I don't know, it felt really grounded to me.
we should murder all these people.
Yeah.
So we're off listener questions. We'll keep an eye out for any more on the various streams. I have Twitch open. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you have YouTube open.
Mm-hmm.
So here's some of my questions, and some of them there might be some overlap here. So I want to talk specifically about this last little leg, and I think we touched on it a bit. How much of what happened for the last leg of the campaign was planned versus something you had to kind of like, okay, well, they want to do something different. Let's
Yeah.
tweak as we go.
I fully embraced Jazz D&D for this last bit for the connective tissue, but I had, for the New Age and what became End of All Things, like the real coda to New Age, I had, I think, 5 things planned out specifically, and I had a map. The map was of the Badlands, and I had all our previous points of interest. I had planned the Arianor thing, which I want to talk more about later. I think I called that Mirror Mirror. I'd planned the Godwin Bay thing. It was very vague. I wrote it down as dragons in dungeons because I was like, we haven't had dragons in this, so I got to do something. I had planned the Feldrum bit that Ryan ended up DMing, where you had the Stoneholm refugees. I might have just been 4th. I had planned the final thing where like you go to Nar Enial and you have the tower in the machine. But I also planned a thing that didn't come up, and I'm glad it didn't for thematic and time reasons, which was that the turtle would have made its way through the Badlands again, having been a year, and you guys would have had to like fight the Kraken. That wasn't a thing I had planned as like, you need to do that. That was something I was rolling for. And like, if it happened, the Kraken would have popped out and interrupted. So those 5 things I had planned. Anything that wasn't specifically those, I did not plan. So the amount of time you spent fucking around with the time bombings and rescuing Bottle Brew, did not plan it. Black Tide Resurgence, did not plan it. Zula Ragnar, like there's a lot of it was improv. Like I think maybe half of it was
Oh, okay,
totally
yeah.
unplanned, just following your guys' lead.
I think that's pretty accurate to most D&D games
Mm-hmm.
also. Like unless you are actively putting like, "Hey, no, you don't get to go there." Like, "No, you get a call from somebody and you need to go here right away."
Yeah.
I think without like those guide rails, like things tend to sprout off naturally in a
Yep.
way and that you're like, "Oh, well that does make sense." Like, why wouldn't they go there? Or like, why wouldn't they do this? This is
Mm-hmm.
perfectly in character. So
Yeah.
that's kind of fun to know that you know, we were a little bit planned, but most
Yeah.
a good chunk of it was unplanned.
I tried to use the lame of calling you to Arianor to like really
Mhm.
draw you guys in, and you guys just decided like, well, that's not what we're gonna do yet. We'll get there. And I was like,
Yeah,
cool. I let
she could wait.
I gave you the maid quest, and you guys said, no, I want some loot first.
Gods in this game can wait. They are not as proactive as they should be. Why should we? I don't know if this auto corrected or I just typed it in wrong. What was the biggest? It says fireball, but I meant curveball. What was the
Curveball.
biggest curveball you got served?
I
And it
don't.
doesn't necessarily have to be in the last segment. It could be the entirety of the thing.
Yeah, I think everything that happened in um Trouble in Paradise. That
Hmm.
was that was a curveball in every sense. I already detailed the drama of Josh's exit, and that was a curveball. Uh,
Yeah.
Playing bait, bringing him into the campaign more regularly. I wasn't planning to do that at that point, or role play him. Turning the I had like I forget what they were, but I had specific plans for that cat
Oh
on the
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and then Josh turned it into Florence, and I'm like, that's gone. And then that established the collar, like the magic inhibiting necklaces, and then Edmund fucking died and then quit. That I wasn't DMing that, but that was like Trouble in Paradise forced me to abandon every preconceived notion I have, let go, and only step in where I was supposed to. And writing after that was basically just everything I did was in response to the players. I was like, that's it. Trouble in Paradise, probably the most consequential part of this campaign for so many reasons.
Hmm. All right. I see that. Was it Bloodshot Pollo?
Oh,
It says message deleted by
oh yeah.
admin. I don't know.
We have a bot moderator, so it was probably someone posting a link or
Probably something
spamming. Yeah.
unkind.
Good job, bot.
Um,
Thanks,
yeah, good job,
Jerry
bot.
bot.
Next one. So as we had discussed before, you were the headmaster, the arch DM. What was the most difficult thing to coordinate between all the different was it like making sure certain themes were interlocked? Was it like trying to be the go between like these other DMs and the players? Was it having to play in an adventure of which you were already kind of apprised of the
Yeah.
situation and goals? Like what was the most difficult part?
Uh I I think playing even like I knew broadly what was happening in every adventure that I played as bait. And in fact, I was meant to be. I really helped structure that. I think,
Mm,
but that wasn't really hard for me to play because again, I felt so true to the character that like I was okay siphoning off. If bait doesn't know this, don't touch it. I think what was harder was just the coordination because that involved again the balance I fucked up in Josh's campaign. I think I learned how to do better later, which is
mm,
ask the outgoing DM where do you want to land, and then ask the incoming DM where do you want to start. That was a delicate
yeah.
balance because I had to be careful what I was sharing. Like I had to make sure that I wasn't gonna tell Matt like, okay, Locke's about to get kidnapped, so can you help me get there?
Yeah.
I'd figure that out on my own. And so using that it was difficult because originally I wanted above boards to be like you guys are returning to the shop and leveling up your spells and buying new
Mhm.
things, but they turned into a real narrative necessity of like I have to do all
Kind
the
of bridging.
lifting. Yeah. And then it also became a matter of making sure that we weren't stepping on each other's toes. I don't remember specifics, but there were times that Chatter was like, I want to do this. I'm like, let's stay away from that because I know someone else is going to do
Gotcha.
something. And when Chatter pitch meant to be, he had said like, I have the idea for either someone hunting you guys or you're flipping back and forth in time. And I was just like, just smush them together. And
Keep them smushed.
yeah, so it was mostly just it was me just trying to make sure that everyone had what they needed, being a little producery, and then trying not to step on anyone's toes at the same time. That was tough to. It was really fulfilling and really fun to see you guys get surprised. But yeah,
Yeah.
really trying to make sure that I'm just connecting tissue and not ruining anything. That was tough.
Yeah, I think that would be the most difficult part. It's like you want to make sure that everybody is getting is starting off in the right place and ending in the right place, but you also don't want to like step on their goals and ideas. And you don't want to flat out tell them no. I could see how that's
Yeah.
the coordination, especially considering so many of us working together. And also like I think nobody really had identical themes in their adventures.
That
You
was
know,
part of the effort for me, was trying to make sure, like, when Chowder said time stuff, I'm like, well, we just did time loops with Matt. So I'm okay paralleling that, but
mhm.
let's really keep this in its own lane. Here's what Matt did. Stay away from that. I did try to get in there like that. You didn't deal with me as much on that because you were first off the rip.
Yeah, it was so yeah,
It was just like,
I
here you go, Ryan, figure it out.
yeah, it was easy because we had done this setup, we had done that little initial like far point thing, escape far point. So it really was wide open. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I wanted to go first was because like it's wide open. We haven't set any kind of like big rules yet.
Yeah,
There's not been like any major changes to the status quo. Like I could have a little bit of free reign and then see what happens. And my initial thought for that adventure was like, oh, this would be a fun little spooky adventure. It'll be relatively short. We'll move on to the next thing and we'll just keep on going. It won't be like major changes to to
yeah,
the story or to characters. Um, so yeah, I got a little piece of it when we kind of did the return,
yeah,
with the Stonehome refugees and stuff. So it was interesting to
yeah,
kind of match up with everybody else a little bit and kind of revisit that place and like
yeah.
the aftermath. And I do think it was fun. Like playing with Matt is a blast. And Maeve, I think it was like because I didn't know. I mean, obviously my BBEG and that was a child. So I was like, chances are low that we're actually going to do combat and like this is going to be a fight. But like it's like it seemed like Maeve very much was like, I don't want to say I'm sorry. I didn't do anything wrong.
That
And
was
honestly,
that
like,
was so fun to. I was frustrated, and I put that into Bottle Brew. Like, I broke character to
yeah.
say like, "Fucking play the game, dude."
It was funny. I was like, oh, we might be going to combat. And I was fine with that to a certain degree. But it was like, yeah, it wasn't like, it didn't feel like Matt was just being like, well, I don't like this. It was like, this fits so well. It's like
It did.
Maeve is
It did.
a kid who doesn't feel like they did anything wrong, it's not technically their fault, but not accidents aren't always something that like there was something I wanted to kind of like touch on that in that arc was like just because it was an accident doesn't mean that like you don't have to like
Yeah,
apologize.
which felt
And I
like,
think that's like
yeah,
a
that
yeah.
was really
It's like
good thematic closure for Stoneholm.
yeah, because I just that was like such a messed up thing that happened. And
Hmm.
I felt like it'd be good to like bring it back, have a chance for like Maeve to kind of come full circle with
Yeah.
it. Even though I think Matt kind of touched on like I think he talked to me. He's like he felt like he'd already kind of come full circle a little bit. Like there was another talk that we had in a previous adventure,
Hmm.
and it kind of felt like it put a cap on it. But it did feel good to kind of like I don't think I had closure with it as
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
DM.
I
So that's
remember
why I wanted to do it again.
I didn't play It Came in the Night with you. I wasn't on those recordings, and that was our plan early on. Was I would just come in and do the edits until Josh, wrote me into playing bait. And I remember just sitting around, farting around. I was playing games where I was working on an early edit. I think I was working on those first edits because it was before the show released.
Mhm.
Um, and I just see a message in Discord. I need a fucking drink. And you guys were all like, that was so bad. Like, it hit you
It was
guys
heavy.
really hard.
I think that was, like, the first time and that's I've played, Wild Magic, and I've had other Wild Magic sorcerers in games. I think that was the first time that because there's, like, 2 of them that can go bad. There's, like,
Hmm.
2 or because honestly, it's not a bad exchange. There's a bunch that are positive, there's a handful that do almost nothing,
Hmm.
There's quite a few that do almost nothing, that are completely cosmetic, and then there's like a couple that are pretty bad for you, but there's only like 3, I think, that are bad for you and
Yeah.
everybody else. There's one where you cast a fireball on yourself. That one, even like depending on your situation, isn't bad, but just take draining the life out of everybody around you. First level, it's bad. But by the time you reach third level, it's an inconvenience. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
like the one time. Ooh, we have a question from Rye. How did you guys choose Chowder?
I can give an answer to that on my
We
side
had
of
talked
things.
about it quite a bit. I'd played with Chowder a couple of times. There was an ill-fated Starfinder campaign that Chowder was a part of, and I was a part of. And I really enjoyed playing with Chowder. I think he brought in an older Pathfinder 1E character into the Starfinder. Basically, he was like in Carbonite or something like that, and then was
That's
like
funny.
released. It was funny. He played the character really well. It was super fun. So I was like, when that, and of course, we had all done Common Geeking program with Chowder
Yeah,
at
yeah,
various
yeah.
points. Um,
So on my side of things, what had happened was I knew that working with Chowder on the CGP podcast back when we were doing that was he could tend to get a little timid and like sort of reticent at times.
mhm.
So it never really came to my mind to like invite him into this project. And then Josh and I were doing something. We hosted these like 50, 60, 70 person D&D events at a mall. We just literally took over the cafeteria on Sundays after the mall closed, and like the local Think Geek, we would like drive people in there to like buy stuff. But like I was running tables with like 12 people in it, and Josh was running tables with like 12 people on them, and it was great. And Chatter showed up and ran some stuff, and he fucking came alive in a
Mhm.
way I had never seen, and I was like, this game does something to him. Uh, and I
Tickles the
was,
dog in such a
yeah,
way.
I saw it, like I was used to him being like kind of like pretty reserved, and then I watched him run a table and he just like exploded with a life I had not seen before, and that really put him front of mind for me. And we're not a huge thing, so we didn't have like the pull or the money to like try to get someone real, so we had to go in our own circles, and I was like, I think we've got something here. And Chatter brought a lot of really great stuff to this campaign, and I'm really really happy with it.
I sent an email to Abria Iyengar and left on red. I'm sorry, we tried.
We tried.
But yeah, I think we were all really down, and yeah, it was just Chowder. He's a good guy.
He's
He's a
he's a
good
good
guy.
guy. He commits to his bits, maybe too
Yeah.
hard sometimes, but he fucking commits, and that's not a thing to complain about. On the note of Chowder, I do want to spiral into another little announcement here, which is we tried launching merch in the past. That sort of fell off again because of work, but Chowder and I, we think we've cracked the code. So starting next month, I'm shooting for June 5th here when this episode drops. Dicepopuli.com/store. We're moving from Redbubble to Printful as a print on demand service. I have revamped all of the logos, and Chowder has created 2 new artworks. One for the End of All Things as like adventure art that you can buy as a print, as well as a friendship artwork of Maeve with the friendship that will be available on various merchandise. So that is going to be available. Those are going to be available starting around when this episode comes out. Hopefully, I can get it together by then. But we are also committing to at least every 3 months introducing something new. This will mean that patrons will get like first run at new merch. Patrons, we're also going to try to set up discount codes so people that subscribe on Patreon get a little percent off of that. And then every 3 months, rotate in something new, ideally partnering with artists in the community and making sure that whatever our revenue split is, that money is going to whoever does it. So if I make it, cool, I get some. Chowder's going to get some for these. And if we commission something, make sure that we're paying them fairly and hopefully get some outside voices, because we've gotten such tremendous fan art over the years. If we can leverage that and reward people for it, I think that's great. But
That'd be
you'll
fun.
have you'll have several new artworks in the merch store soon. Thank you, Chowder, for helping me put that together. I think the next one I want to roll out, I want to finish building it in Incarnate, and then commission like a real nicely done map of the Badlands, and you can order a big
Okay,
fucking
yeah.
thing of that. But we also have a bunch of character ideas for stuff like cult and whatnot. So That's gonna be big.
Bunch of boudoir shoots for cult.
I think I had an idea of something like "Don't talk to me until I've had my like murder" or something like that. Like a
Don't
cult.
talk until
I
I've
don't remember what
murdered
it
for the
was,
day.
but it's something like that. But cult's a
That's funny.
fucking a rich bed of soil.
It's a good guy. Another of my questions:
Hmm.
was there anything we didn't do that I know you touched on this a little bit? There was a chance of the Kraken coming in, but
Yeah.
was there anything? I guess throughout the realm of the campaign, was there anything that you were like, they're gonna take the hook on this? Like, there's no way they're gonna say no, and then we just completely like went the other way.
I think that by the time I was fully taking over, I had accepted like I planned those big things and everything else was just like just got to roll with it. This map is too big. These characters are too wild. But there was one thing that I thought was never going to happen and it didn't, which was but I had started planning for it just in case. Um we'll talk more about Mirror Mirror in a little bit, which was the revisit to Arianor where you guys had to figure out the divergent
Mhm.
timelines. And there were three timelines that we visited. One where the natives took the power, one where the mage lords took the power, and one where
Mhm.
the villagers took the power. And like kind of explore all those and figure out how they were connected. There was a fourth timeline that was not discovered that would have been discovered by a random die roll, which was a timeline where the bread man took the power.
Oh, Breadman. That would have been a good one. I would
Yeah.
have liked that a lot. I mean, it would have been narratively very confusing, but
Yes,
we
it would.
we 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 really set it up. We really set up. I mean, if there's one narrative thread that I guess we didn't wrap up into the ending, it was the bread man. It
Yeah.
would have been funny if like if we had never seen one of the gods, and then wait, I always get them confused. Is Asgard the bad
Asgard's the one
one?
that you killed. Asmagath was the one.
If we had killed the dragon and then it had turned into Breadman, I think that would have knit that really cleanly. I think that would have been perfect. If we can retouch that in post, I think that would be perfect.
Oh
Um,
man, when I'll edit together an abridged version of the show and I'll make sure I
yeah,
squeak that in.
there's Breadman.
So people who
Uh,
listen to the Redux are like, "That was a weird ending," and real
yeah,
fans are like, "What are you talking about?"
really paid off that
Yeah,
keeping on the bread man.
yeah.
So Matt said, "Hi guys, do you think those hooks would have been
Hi,
taken?"
Matt.
Talking about my previous question, if we had an airship, I wanted an airship so bad.
Chowder wanted an airship so bad.
But it was one of those things that felt like we're locked into this nautical theme.
Yeah.
You gotta kind of keep it. We weren't
So
actually doing that much like travel. I guess like timing came in a little bit.
once we
Recently
hit
we were
New
kind of going between
Age,
the islands, but
yeah.
yeah.
So this actually ties in very nicely to the question you just asked, talking about unrealized plans, which was I had the idea of an airship in my head from the beginning. Like as soon as Josh introduced the friendship, I was like, of course this can turn into a friendship. That got fleshed out with the Tide Pod, which is like you need to know how to make the thing in order to transform into it. So when you guys asked Serafina that question, that to me that logic was already established. You just needed to build it. I tried to give you a step in that direction with the floaty boy.
Mm.
If you had taken what you learned with the floaty boy and the little hot air balloon thing and tried to
Mhm.
replicate with that in the friendship, I would have absolutely allowed it. I think Chowder's hook of wanting to find Ivo Lishi for it makes sense. That fits with the logic that I laid out. Um, I think that having an airship would not have changed that much because unless we're talking like jet speed things, like you're still not
If
going super
Final
fast.
Fantasy VII, after they stop the dirigible part and it's all rockets and stuff, that's what we needed. The real
Yeah,
fast zoomy
exactly.
one,
Yeah,
we would have
the
been cooking with gas there.
cult sort of ended on the note of wanting to bring the war to the mage lords, and I'd had the idea that if we do a sequel campaign, you guys would have like an airship and you'd be flying over the mainland. So maintain the
Be
structure and different
bombing
set.
the
Yeah,
mainland.
exactly. So I don't think the airship would have changed this very much because mobility between islands was never friction
Yeah,
for
yeah,
us unless we were doing like a combat. I wanted you guys to have it, and we just didn't end up there.
yeah, yeah. It would have been fun. I think it would have been fun to have because I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy head, and you can't have a good Final Fantasy game without an airship or
Yeah.
something flying.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, like, I think that was one of the points why we did islands. We could keep it nautical, everything would be relatively accessible. You wouldn't have to worry about like, oh, we have to fly over the great gap of blah blah blah. Everything would kind of make sense. I think, I guess maybe if we wanted to like look for the turtle again, I guess that would have been something
Airship
that
would
could be
come in handy
helpful.
for that. And I think, especially with what Maeve saw in the finale, I think that that door is very open, that's still out there. And I guess back on the subject of gods for a second, I really wanted to nail home the point that yes, you guys beat Azagar, but if you guys hadn't done anything, the world would have kept on moving. It just would have been different. And that there are other godly conflicts, and this is just the one you latched onto. Like, you guys could have fucking tried to stay on the turtle and say, what's going on with this Kraken? And we could have. I wanted to be very clear that this is just the thread you guys pulled. So,
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
something like an airship, it just would have been another tool to, like, let you pull at the threads you wanted.
Got another question. What was your favorite point in the campaign?
Mirror, mirror, the second trip to Arianor. I am. I'm so in love with how that went down because one, I was picking up on something someone else did, and I was like, I don't want to override that. And I felt like I'm very proud of my ability to build on what Matt did as a foundation without disrespecting any of it at all. And I've never been so satisfied as a dungeon master as creating a giant Majora's Mask playground full
Mm,
of mechanics and points in the story, and I didn't change any of them once we started playing. And it was just letting you guys figure out the puzzle of Arianor. And you did. I created this big puzzle and I watched you guys figure it out. And I
mhm.
felt so gratified. That was wonderful.
It's hard to say. We had a lot of good moments. There was a couple in Pat's adventure that I really liked. I think if I had to narrow it down, there was that one puzzle that Pat had,
You love the
where it was
fish
like
puzzles.
honestly, like I think about that puzzle. That puzzle that he had was so much fun. Like I think it was like the perfect level of difficulty where it was like, oh, that's clever, and then like you get it, but it wasn't like, oh, you have to do the same thing like 20 times. It was like perfect level of clever. I think that is one of my favorite moments. Honestly, Maeve doing the wild magic search. I think that's one of my favorite, not necessarily in like, ooh, that was such a fun moment, but it completely changed the tempo. I think I learned a lot about like how to handle situations like that from
Yeah,
that. Like it
invent a
was a
death
great
cult.
learning experience. Yeah, it was a great learning experience, and I think it was just like it is something that I have brought up, like when people talk about like, oh, what's like the biggest curveball? Oh, what was like the wildest things happened to you? I consistently bring that up.
Yeah,
I think it is one
it's
of like the biggest curveballs I've been handed, and I think it was a great learning moment for everybody.
yeah,
And not even in just the game, but also like the afterwards. We were talking about like, is everybody okay? Like,
yeah,
uh, do we need to take a moment? Do we want that to happen? We can roll that back. Like, I think it was a great moment for like communication that everybody had. I think it was a really good moment for like the story, unexpected
yeah.
storytelling that was not planned. So that one I'm trying to think
Yeah, I
of
think it
another.
really, I think that was, if we're talking individual moments, that was pretty
Mhm.
foundational because it shook all of us loose of what our expectations were.
Yeah.
Um, and since then, I think we've gotten very good about like checking in with each other, like, how was that session? Are you comfortable? And sometimes there are jokes that like went too far in certain directions where we're like, okay, I'm in the
Change
edit.
that back.
Should we take this back? Like, what are you guys comfortable with? Like, I don't think there's anything that's gone out that didn't get everyone's stamp of approval in some way.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we got really good at having that atmosphere.
So yeah, that was there might be another moment. I mean, I thought it was really funny using so the most it was pretty recent. What was it, the invisible barrier thing, and then forgetting that I was concentrating on fly, and then Locke falling out of the
That was
sky, and then the
so
dragon hitting
fun.
over invisible wall.
That was
That was
so
funny and
fun.
completely unexpected because it's just like me being a big battle, not thinking all the way through, panic, like, oh, like this is a great way to like fuck with the dragon, but oh, Locke
Which
is gonna
is,
drop out of the sky.
I think part of the frustration and the surprise was so it's out of character for you. You and Matt in particular, like, you guys are really buttoned up about what you're doing with your characters and spells. To see you make that high stakes a goof caught me so off guard. And
It was
editing
a
that,
solid
I
scene.
went through that pass in the edit so many times, just cracking up. Pat
It's
got
like,
so mad
oops.
at you. He got
He
so mad
did.
at you.
Yeah, I completely forgot. I was like, "Oh, I'm flying," but oh yeah,
I
oops.
turned that into
I
one of the little videos that went out on social media of him just saying, "You stupid bitch," over and over again.
yeah. Kind of this is maybe a good joiner with the favorite point. This is not necessarily maybe your least favorite point, but if there was something you could change at any point, juncture, scenario in the campaign, what would it be? You know, and it
Uh
could be nothing if you
No,
think
I
about
I think what I wanted, I don't want to change anything mechanically. I think that in terms of playing the game, I really like where we all landed. I would have liked to see narratively what would happen if one of our main PCs like died aside from
Mhm.
Edmund, but again, the dice did what the dice did. But the thing that I kind of regret the most, and I tried my best to fill some of this in, was the lack of development of the mage lords as a threat. And
Mhm.
I think the solution I landed on was the mage lords aren't actually everywhere, but they're just this lingering idea. And I really leaned into the thought that the potency of their power is that they don't have to be everywhere to be a threat. Like it is what they do to people emotionally that makes them so fucking evil. And um I that was kind of a band-aid. I like that theme, but I think what would have been stronger is if we had figured that out beforehand. I would
Mm.
like to have developed the Mage Lord threat earlier in the world building so that by the time we got to Strauss, we would have context for like why is Strauss weird and different as a villain in a second chance. Like why are the fleets behaving this way in the new age? Like it I
Yeah.
think that we really missed an opportunity there. Oop, Apple is putting fireworks on my screen. Thank you, Apple. But if you if we ever get the chance to revisit this in any form, either publishing a full campaign book, adaptations of any kind, if we ever have that kind of luck, I don't necessarily want to change characters or plot to a tremendous degree aside from what is needed for an adaptation. I want the Mage Lords to be baked as an antagonist.
Yeah. I think I didn't really touch on them at all in my adventure. And that was
Yeah.
because like at that early stage, I wasn't even sure if they were going because I wasn't like plotting out the full campaign. I wasn't even sure if they would be a consistent threat throughout the campaign. My idea was like they're at the peripheries. They're keeping basically this open. I based a lot of the idea of the Badlands off of Australia.
Yeah.
So like
Yes.
so it was like they're just sending prisoners here to
Yeah.
like civilize this land so they can like take the benefits of the
Yeah.
materials that are there. They're a force, but they're like not necessary. They're not everywhere. It's like, oh
Yeah.
crap, they're here. Like when you do encounter them, but like so I didn't really think about like it would have made sense if maybe there was like a mage lord advisor or something like that. There was
Yeah.
like a constable or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
there that
Yeah.
was maybe subtly involved in a way that was like a hindrance, maybe
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily part of the full thing for they come at night.
Mm-hmm.
So if knowing what I know now, I probably would have maybe had them some like in
Yeah.
some way in the mix.
Because even the Australia metaphor sort of fell away just by
Mhm.
necessity because we didn't have that narrative structure in place. So what I ended up kind of turning the Badlands into was like, yes, they're shunting their prisoners here, but they're not using it to develop the Badlands. They're trying to keep the Badlands in chaos until they can get the
Mhm.
power that they want. Like it's just the disarray of the Badlands was the point for them. But again, that was something that we had to like find in the
Yeah, yeah.
adventure, and like that was not the intention going in.
I
Um,
think that is the difficulty of the format of having it
yeah.
kind of because we have a thing, nothing's really canon until it's spoken aloud. Everybody has their own like viewpoints on like
Mm-hmm.
how this works. And I think that's one of maybe the hard parts of that format is like, at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
when you're the first couple people doing it, like it's a lot of stuff in the air. And then as it goes on, people are building off top of you, but they're
Yeah.
doing their own things. And all of a sudden, like you're going here, and then the tree branch goes
Yeah.
all the way over here. So, yeah, but
Yeah.
I think it's still interesting. It's still fun. I think there's a lot of lessons learned from this format. Like if we were to do like this exact format again, I think there's a lot that we could take away from
Yeah,
this. Is
I
like,
think that we would know what to build beforehand and what to leave open.
yeah,
I learned a lot from it. Ray has another
Ray, yeah.
fantastic
Along
question.
those lines, did you expect Jerry to become a lasting character? I can say personally no, because Jerry was just something that happened.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a good idea. Like we were captured or about to be captured.
Yeah.
This mage lord guard was like saw us, zip 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 zip. And there's like, oh
Yep.
crap, what are we gonna do with this dead body? I'll just make a zombie and be like, oh, we'll pretend to be like arrested or whatever. Um, so I didn't expect, and I lost Jerry,
Yeah.
and the only reason that Jerry came back was it was kind of a goof, I think, on Matt's part, where like he
Yeah.
stepped out of a portal,
Yeah,
like a different
during the
version of
yeah, it
Jerry.
was like the final boss was Strauss. He had like
Yeah,
these bubbles going through these bubbles in time, and I think he was just rolling like d6s. Like I think he had a set of
yeah,
random stuff. Like I did that. Like whenever Locke ended up being forced to flirt in the fucking the onion place, the
yeah,
that was just me rolling a d6, and that's exactly what Jerry was. We just
yeah.
glommed onto it. Like Matt gave us this little gift. It was not supposed to be anything. And at the end, Jerry turned into the foundation of Cult's development and the realization of his initially stated fantasies.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that was right around the time too that I got like Raised Dead or whatever version
Yeah.
of it was like Raised Undead. So I really wanted to use it. I always thought of Cult as having like a crew of undead around. Like when the first conception of Cult was that he was like the Bone Master. He was a
I always remember
pirate.
that name. I almost said it in the finale, but I'm like, that doesn't feel right
Yeah.
anymore.
He was, and his thing was that he was a pirate and that he had like a skeleton crew and like had a bony ship and like was kind of that was his thing. He was like moseying around the Badlands in this giant
Yeah. You were the only one that knew how to
skeletal
run a
ship.
ship.
Yeah, so like there's some vestiges of that, but by the time like we got past, playing the first couple rounds of the character, I think I was like, ah, that Bone Master sounded kind of funny, but not in a good way after
Yeah.
like the second time saying it. So there was always this idea, and I brought some of those things forth. So like we had the skeleton crew on the ship, Jerry was obviously a big part of that. So that was like some of those things like coming forward that I really, necromancers are such a weird class in 5e. They're not particularly built well to do the thing that they're designed to
Yeah.
do. um, because they sacrifice a lot that other subclasses get to be like, oh, well, you can raise dead like a minuscule bit better than literally
Yeah.
anybody else.
And that
Um,
was the foundation of the
yeah,
little prologue that you and I did with Call is you told me what you wanted to explore. And I was like, well, how do I do this? And I read all the spells for it. I'm like, oh, these spells are very prohibitive. It just what would happen if you fucked up a spell, and that just kind of became the
yeah.
narrative thread we pulled at. But yeah, no, I like that truth that you had to grapple with that changed your character literally informed how I wrote that entire one-off adventure.
But yeah, so Jerry was definitely not meant to be a
No.
lasting character. I'm glad that we did find Jerry because I
Yeah.
think I got very attached to Jerry. It was a good foil for like comedy because
Mm-hmm.
Jerry is literally like the wa was like a good s like, if the Penn and Teller type of thing,
Yeah.
Jerry was the silent sidekick basically that I could basically put all of my stuff
Yeah.
onto, in a scene. So that was always fun, and I think everybody realized how the origin story and how we treated Jerry was very funny, so it kinda
Yeah.
became like a bit of a fan favorite and just stuck around. I mean, our
Yeah.
bot on the Discord is called the Jerry bot
Yeah.
and
I
everything,
was talking to
so
Pat about naming our Twitch bot also Jerry, but now that Jerry's more realized, maybe we go back to Uge or something or Zula. I don't know.
yeah.
But I only have a couple of minutes left.
I have
Is
one question left unless you have something else that
no,
you
go
wanna
for it. Hit me.
do. Um, Anything that you've learned about yourself or your style as a DM during Dicey Waters?
I have always used D&D more for it as like a mediation tool, which is what it is, but I don't care very much about the world of D&D or the fiction. I like the tools, and I don't even like all the tools. Like I famously do not like initiative. Like necessary evil. So I think what I learned about myself is that if I the way I like to DM now is I like to do the groundwork. You know, I like having a map. I like knowing the places on the map. I like knowing the important players, what things I might need to prep for, and then just letting it rip. Not quite
Mm,
fully Jazz D&D, maybe Jazz D&D, and that with Jazz you need to have, you know, a pretty,
yeah.
you all need to be on the same page with some like fundamental theory, but the rest of it is vibes. So that's all that the reason New Age End of All Things took as long as it did is because that's what I did. I built the map, I built 4 encounters, and I said, go.
Yeah.
And that was it. And that's really how I like to do it. And I think it gave us what we needed. Too much of it,
Yeah.
but yes.
I agree. I think my early days of playing, especially as a dungeon master, I was very much like, I need to write all this stuff out. I need like speeches. I need dialogue. I need to plot out exactly what everybody is doing. And by the time we had started my arc, I was like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna make like a bit of a playground. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
like there is a story happening, but the original intent was that like, oh, like this thing was gonna be happening, and then they were gonna have to like figure out a way to like trap the monster. And there was a lot of things they could do to do that.
Yeah.
So but I think the thing I've learned the most is jazz DMing. I really like that stuff. In the same way, like I'll still do quite a bit of prep, but it's all world building. It's like,
Yeah.
what do I want out of this world? Who are the players?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are the cool, interesting bits that are going to be the most interesting things to present?
Yeah.
And I think I learned that. And then, playing with all these other dungeon masters and stuff, I think I've picked up, obviously jazz DMing
Josh.
from Josh, but picked up little bits and bobs from everybody. I think handling prep certain ways, like how you handle interpersonal
Yeah.
encounters, how you handle like time related things. I've always had, I think, time travel and time loops are always very complicated to do, but playing in them, it's like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
this is a really good way to do it. So I feel like I've learned just so much. I
Yeah.
think that's the best way to learn is like being under, if you are forever DM and you only play your own games and you never really
Yeah.
switch up your players, you don't, you learn how to be yourself, but you don't learn from others in the same way.
That
Um,
that was a
so
huge part. I think I'm so grateful for this format. Like I have a hard time imagining doing a 4-year campaign where you don't rotate DMs because
yeah,
being able to like get out of the driver's seat and being able to learn from you guys, or I do something and so often you guys would check me and say that's not how this works. What is the implication of this? And it was never hostile. It always felt good, well intentioned, and we were all contributing towards something. Where if you had one DM and it's one DM rules, eh. But again, the idea of having us all be DMs made us invested in this differently, and it changed the way we work together. And
yeah,
I don't know if I'll ever have this experience again. I'm so glad that we did the whole thing and
yeah,
we
yeah,
saw it
yeah,
through. I will always be proud of this for those
yeah.
reasons.
It was a definitely first full campaign, first podcast campaign. It's definitely one for the books. Do you I think we're running out of time. I think we have like 3 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any last little nugs of news or anything else you want to hit on?
Well, I have a few more news things. I have a whole list of announcements that we're going to be making. The day that this comes out, I'm going to have to try to have that up June 5th, dicepopuli.com. I'm really trying to make that a great one stop shop where you can get to the Discord, the Patreon, the Twitch, everything. But there's going to be a blog post there about what we're doing, not just with podcasts, not streaming, but stuff on Patreon, stuff about moonshot ambitions that we have, things that we're going to be changing in terms of community events and things like that in the Discord that I'm working with Ray and Kale on. Um, we're really trying. I think I was always daunted by the amount of work it would take to make Dice Pop a real thing, and maybe it's a little late to try, but our campaign is in the can. I'm so proud of it, and we're gonna try now. I'm really excited to share that with you guys. And this has been, I will always like I used to do theater in high school. I've worked on TV shows and stuff. Like I know what it's like to end something and be like, "Ah, that was cool." This feels like one of those that's like this is the core memory.
Yeah, yeah,
This was wonderful, and I'm so thankful to everybody that like came along for the ride, and Ryan, to you and everyone that like did it with us. Like this world would not
yeah.
exist without you, and you watched me break it in front of you a million times, and we just had such a good time.
No, it was a great time. I mean, there was a few times I think there's a couple of moments in like Chowder's game where I was like, "This
Hmm.
is not the fucking world I wrote."
No.
There was like, "What do you mean? What the hell does this mean?"
Yeah.
But I think those are also good things because if I did know how the world was, then there'd be less surprises. So I
Yeah.
enjoy the fact that it became so much more and so different than
Yeah.
what I like wrote out.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
wonderful. So
been a
wonderful.
blast.
So thank you everybody that did tune in. Everybody that's listening to this later, I hope you enjoy it, but you can find us now on Twitch. You can find us in your podcast feed. I'm going to try to make sure there's stuff on YouTube, stuff out on social media. I just want to make sure that Dice Populi, Dicey Waters will always be what it is, but I want to make sure we keep just being a nice place to learn more about games and try stuff in a new way. Ryan, thank you for doing this with me and
Of
helping
course.
me put this together. Everyone in the chat that stopped by, thank you so much. I also have to go to the bathroom so excruciatingly badly. So the timing to wrap up could
It
not be
was
better.
perfect.
Yeah.
All right. But
All
yeah,
right.
this was great. And I hope everybody has a great day.
All right. Bye everybody. Thank you for watching and we will
Bye.
see you for Spine of Eternity in just a couple weeks.
Woo!
Woo!